Denis Worsnop is the vocalist of one of the most legendary bands in metalcore history. Someone the scene looked up to and everyone loved. However, he became someone he was never meant to be, resulting into the fans feeling betrayed when he went country, causing tension between him and his band, and rebelling against everyone who even spoke his name. Today, we cover one of the most controversial vocalists in this side of music and his identity crisis. Because once you understand the full picture, you'll notice the signs were always there. Before any controversy, there was a moment where Asking Alexandria felt untouchable. Late 2000s, early 2010s, Warped Tour was a big part of alternative music culture and Crabcore was exploding. Every kid with straightened hair and skinny jeans knew the name Denis Worsnop, being not only the vocalist of Asking Alexandria, but one of Crabcore's biggest mascots. I've touched on Crabcore quite a few times on this channel, so I'll just scratch the surface. AA was one of the two trendsetters of the scene, the other ones being Attack Attack. The sound was chaotic with electronic breakdowns, choruses that were massive, and auto-tune layered over screams. Denis was right at the center of it all. He had insane energy, charisma, star power. He was a party animal, really representing what Crabcore embodied. But here's what people forget or just don't know. Something quite important. Denis wasn't a trained vocalist. In fact, he was never even supposed to be the singer.
Did you have some kind of like vocalist that you looked up to?
No, we couldn't find one. I was the guitarist. We had one guy fly over from the US and he couldn't get through immigration. They sent him back. We had another guy that we asked who was in a band called Heaven's Basement, and he turned it down. And then we'd written a couple songs and we'd written the vocals for them. So Ben and I were going to go in individually and kind of piece together a vocal take as best we could so people knew how it went so they could audition. Okay. And I went in first and I came out and he fired me. And said, "You are the singer now." I haven't screamed in a very long time when it comes to like the harsh stuff, the screaming stuff. A guy I met who kind of teaches that stuff had helped me walk through some things about a month ago, and it clicked about a week ago. So up until then I was just very much damaging my voice constantly and permanently.
I was actually going to ask you next that were you losing your voice in the early days when you started screaming your lungs out?
Yeah, I'd probably have like between 1 and 3 good shows a tour. And other than that, it's like my voice would be in a lot of pain and struggling.
That accidental decision created one of the most recognizable voices in metalcore history. But it wasn't easy. He damaged his voice early, partied hard, and most importantly, he was inconsistent live. One night he'd kill it on the mic, and the next he might be drunk and trying to kill a fan with the mic.
Everyone who thinks I'm a drunk piece of shit, put their hands up.
And while the band was chaotic and unpolished, to say the least, during these shows, that was a part of the appeal. The kids loved the reckless behavior. It resulted into great tour stories, not being afraid to mention the substance abuse and backstage madness. While a lot of bands hide that kind of stuff, Asking Alexandria and Denis completely leaned into it.
But we were running around the bus naked, like, you know, climbing in front of the driver and stuff, distracting him. He's driving down the highway in Canada and we're like, ooh, penis, penis, dipping it on his head and shit. Ben, like starts jumping on me and shit and trying to annoy me, trying to get me off the phone. I'm trying to kick him away. And somehow his head ended up, like, in this region. And I was like, gripping onto him so he, like, fucking stay still. And he licked my penis!
Let go. I don't give a fuck.
The band released 2 legendary records by 2011, which pushed them into being the mascots for the entire scene. And that can be a double-edged sword. Because when you're the face of this moment in culture, when you're on top of a specific corner of music, I'm sure it feels amazing. You're swimming in money and in fans, but you don't get to evolve. And when you try to, You just get judged for.
I'm a compulsive liar!
By the time the third record dropped, From Death to Destiny, you could already feel a shift. The electronics were dialed back, and the cleans in a lot of the songs sound more hard rock influenced. They even did a rock mix version of their song, The Death of Me, feeling like their next big move was going mainstream, and From Death to Destiny was the bridge to a new sound. And of course, the fans noticed. This was far from damaging the band's career or anyone assuming that they were about to fall off. However, while this was a lot of people's favorite album, a small portion of the audience started calling it butt rock. They didn't really enjoy this arena rock sound that the band is seemingly going towards. It wasn't really hate, I guess it was more concern, and a lot of people just resisted this new sound. Because remember, when you're the mascot of a movement, you don't get to experiment without pushback. And who's gonna get the most pushback as the frontman of this band? Danny. He was stylistically and vocally changing, but I don't really blame him, as he admitted himself he wasn't trained.
Guttural scream that I just figured out like one day. You know, I was like, oh, I think I could kind of do that. That's it.
You're lucky. I blew my voice out so many times. I just started getting help about 4 or 5, maybe 6 months ago.
Admitting that for years he had no formal vocal training and was essentially screaming without technique, something he later acknowledged was damaging his voice over time. In combination with that reckless lifestyle that fans romanticized, things catch up fast. You can only run on adrenaline and alcohol for so long before your body starts breaking down on you. And at the same time, his taste was changing. Keep in mind, Danny didn't grow up on this kind of music.
What actually got you into metal music at first? When do you recall hearing metal for the first time?
It would have probably been back during when music television was still a thing that existed. I grew up initially a lot of Bryan Adams, Bon Jovi, Johnny Cash. There was a little bit of very small amount of things like Guns N' Roses and stuff, but that was definitely about as heavy as it got in my childhood and in the household of what I was exposed to.
He grew up on Bryan Adams and Bon Jovi. He loves Adele and soul. He really loved the more emotional and big vocal performances. With this context, their third album, From Death to Destiny, shouldn't feel too random with their hard rock elements, as this really felt like Danny was trying to implement what he's actually into. While the album did well and the band was still huge, there was still mild tension because the crowd wanted one thing and Asking Alexandria felt like they wanted another. Now, this was a mild discussion on the internet, but by 2015, the band's name was making headlines, and their darkest chapter was at the horizon.
This is kind of breaking news. Asking Alexandria vocalist Danny Worsnop has left the band very recently, and he has stated, "To all my friends and fans, I would like to let you know that Asking Alexandria and I are moving forward in separate ways. Over the last 8 years together, we've done some amazing things and created something truly special. I now, same as then, want what's best for the band, and at this point in time, this isn't me. Asking Alexandria will continue to tour throughout the year and will be working on a new album. I will always support and love Asking Alexandria and cannot wait to see what the future holds for them."
Yeah, I mean, it was just time.
Before diving into why Danny left and how he became the villain, until the ultimate evil showed up, of course, I want to take a look at Danny's character thus far and really try to put us into his shoes. Because this video is about Danny's identity crisis. It's not about his substance abuse. It's not a rise and fall of Asking Alexandria. There's already amazing videos that do that. Shout out my boy X the Yan. Danny was the face of Crabcore at 23 years old, but think about how backwards that is. He wasn't even supposed to be the singer of this band. He didn't grow up on metal, and he was, again, actively damaging his voice while basically playing a character that the entire scene, without realizing, forced onto him. That's a wild position to be in, and the signs were there long before 2015. The straining his voice during shows, which kept him inconsistent, and the partying going from legendary tour stories to something that's clearly affecting performances. Substance abuse stops being cute really quick when it starts creating tension within the business you run with your friends. And across interviews, he started saying how he wanted to sing more than scream to prove he wasn't a one-trick pony. And this also tells us he's starting to grasp onto his true self. So now we have this frontman who didn't plan to be that, listening to Bryan Adams and Adele while leading a metalcore movement, who is slowly trying to shift the sound inside the band without fully breaking it. From Death to Destiny was an attempt at evolution. Again, it was a mixed reaction, but when you're the mascot of a specific culture, it feels like you don't get to change, and if you do, it's not easy. I'm sure it felt like the options were either stay the same forever or leave. By 2014, the version of Danny that helped build Asking Alexandria wasn't the version of Danny that he really wanted to be anymore. So when he left in 2015, if it felt sudden, you probably weren't paying attention. Which is fine, I'm sure you touch grass, this isn't an insult. But this was the inevitable collapse of an identity that couldn't sustain itself forever. After his genre shift, a lot of people felt like Danny betrayed the scene. But was it really betrayal, or was it the scene never allowing him to become anything else? When the split was announced in January 2015, everything seemed fine on the surface. Danny's statement was calm and supportive. He said the last 8 years had been amazing, that they created something special, that he still loved the band. But I want to zoom into one specific line. I, now same as then, want what's best for the band, and at this point in time, that isn't me. What he's essentially saying is he just doesn't align with them anymore.
I mean, like I said in my press release on it, it was just time for us to part ways. We reached a point musically where we wanted different things.
He made it clear that the band would continue, that he supported them, and that he was excited for the next chapter of his life with We Are Harlot, his brand new hard rock project. And what elements did From Death to Destiny start incorporating? Hard rock. But looking into the band statement, the vibe was a little different, feeling more like they're trying to ensure that the boat doesn't sink more than anything. They emphasized that the band was bigger than one person and they're gonna tour harder than ever, mentioning this wasn't the end, it's just a new chapter. When you say you're bigger than one member, it comes off as if you're trying to reassure people that the foundation is still intact. It also tells us the band knew they were taking a gamble losing this metalcore mascot. However, this was the least messiest they're going to be for a while. Not long after, the band moved forward and eventually brought in Denis Stoff. And with this new vocalist, it feels more in line with the early era, as if this was the true direction they were meant to go towards. Dropping the album The Black, and the fans just completely ate this shit up. The timeline had officially been corrected. All it costed was their star vocalist. But while things were going well for the band, Danny was doing something completely different. Starting his project We Are Harlot, and this was a completely new shift. Being influenced by classic bands like Van Halen, Aerosmith, Def Leppard, and Kiss. This band was a lot more shreddy and felt like it belonged on your Alcoholic Uncle's playlist rather than your own. But this wasn't his only venture. Danny started releasing solo material, and this is when controversy arose. He became country-leaning and adapting this southern rock aesthetic. Fans became confused because Danny is not only on a different side of the musical spectrum, but he isn't even American. Yet he had this red state, boots and whiskey, rural American visuals. And for a lot of scene kids who grew up with him as the Crabcore guy, it felt confusing to say the least. With the context we now have, the pivot makes sense, but to anyone without it, the shift left a bad taste in their mouth. And of course, Danny is not budging. And this might sound random, but think about the stereotype of a religious household. The more something is forced onto you, the harder you rebel against it. When a scene spends years defining you as one thing and then rejects you when you step outside of it, there's a certain kind of defiance that can kick in. Sometimes the more people push back, the harder you lean towards the thing they don't want you to be. I don't think Danny was trying to provoke the fans. I think he was just trying to prove to us that we don't own him. He's always been the rebellious type, and we saw that through his frontman chaos. And at this point, it now feels like he's rebelling in the form of refusal, really trying to prove to us that he didn't need this scene at all.
Danny recently said he quit the band. This is a serious question because he felt Asking Alexandria lost its artistic integrity.
After the clean statements, things didn't really stay clean, as both Danny and his now ex-band made tensions pretty public. Examples being Danny during an interview with Alt Press stated that the band lost their artistic integrity, and Ben Bruce replying this.
What's really annoying about that is I saw that the other day and I was like, one, we just spoke a few days prior and I feel like on good terms. And what's really annoying about it is artistic integrity. He's an Englishman from England, obviously, Hull, England, singing country music with an American accent. Where's your integrity?
Are you going to be Team Danny, who left the band to play country? Or are you going to stick by the band side, who seemingly give the people what they want, making the division feel more about loyalty than actual music? And Danny lost that loyalty battle for a long time now. Regardless, he went on to do his own thing while the band did theirs, picking up Denis Stoff as their new vocalist. And the Denis arc is an extremely hot mess that really leaves the beef between Danny and AA like in the fucking shadows, just because of how insane the Denis arc was. I did an entire second channel video on that subject, so if you want to know exactly what went down, I'll put it in my description. But what's relevant to today's topic is what he did for the band and showed the scene. The band became heavier again, feeling closer to 2011 than ever before, and everyone was happy, moshing away and celebrating that OG Asking Alexandria is back. But the issue that lies is Denis didn't really evolve the band, he just kind of preserved it. Denis just represented the version of AA that the fans, him included as he started as a fan, refused to let die. While this is something that worked for an album, I don't think it would have lasted too long, just because it's often when we see a lack of evolution from artists and they eventually get left in the dark. But I'm not trying to stray too far away from the topic at hand, so let's move forward. Denis left Asking Alexandria, but it wasn't really handled professionally at all. He ghosted the band after going home to Ukraine to be with his family, as things were looking pretty bad in his country. Everyone in the band was understanding about him going home. Of course they were, but they were left confused when they received a text from Denis after being ghosted for so long.
We didn't kick Denis out of the band. He just stopped talking to us. It got to the time where we started trying to organise a video shoot for Send Me Home. You're like, okay, Denis needs to fly back to the States. We're going to do a video for Send Me Home. And everything seemed fine. And then he just stopped responding, you know. And I texted him a bunch, loads of emails back and forth. No response whatsoever. So we were quite confused. Like, well, what the hell's going on, sort of thing. Maybe he's just having a break. Maybe he's tired. We don't know. You know, and I received a message from him, something along the lines of, Asking Alexandria does not exist unless I get what's owed to me.
Ben went on livestream to announce this, and the fans immediately asked for Danny back. However, they're looking at things with rose-tinted glasses, as they seem to only be remembering the good. They're not thinking about the chaos or the drama or the rebellion he had towards them. Nonetheless, the fans got what they wanted, and ultimately, so did Danny.
We don't know if I've still got it.
Expectations were high for Danny. And in hindsight, that was kind of unrealistic. He's not 23 anymore. He's not the chaotic, unpredictable frontman from 2011. He spent years leaning into hard rock and country, which became his new comfort zone. And now he was stepping back into metalcore, a genre he was never fully into in the first place. When he came back, he was more controlled and vocally different. Even when playing the old hits, he just wasn't using that high-pitched, gritty tone that people grew to love. He was using that fuller arena rock voice, the same voice he'd been developing outside of the band. He was doing this voice towards the end of his departure, but doing it now is basically signaling to the crowd, you can have me back, but I'm still gonna be me. After his return, Asking Alexandria released their self-titled album, and the rose-tinted glasses have officially worn off. Just like from Death to Destiny, the reaction was mixed. Some fans accepted it, while others started calling them butt rock again. All we did was just repeat history. And instead of taking that blow once for trying to change their sound like most other bands, Asking Alexandria took it twice. And all of this comes back to identity expectations. People wanted another Stand Up and Scream, or even something closer to The Black. Instead, what we got felt like From Death to Destiny Part 2. And whether fans liked it or not, Danny ultimately got his way musically. The band leaned into hard rock influence, and there was a huge lack of their chaotic sound, which we all should have seen coming as we begged for Danny back. Fans were glad that he returned, but the version of Danny we got was the one he had become rather than the one we remembered. As we now know, Asking Alexandria started as a band that really imprinted a mark in metalcore history, making waves and assisting in starting trends. That alone adds a ton of weight on your shoulders. No matter what move you make next as a project, there's going to be an unhappy portion of your audience. When Danny returned, they might have been able to pump out another record closer to their earlier work, using the hype of Danny's return as the marketing push, just to cash in on the moment. It may have resulted in a final bang for the band, but that's all it would have been, because they'll just be doing what Denis did for the guys. That being preserving the nostalgia rather than evolving as a unit. Nostalgia does sell, look at festivals like When We Were Young. But the issue is nostalgia freezes you in time. If Asking Alexandria fully leaned into recreating 2011, they'd basically be admitting that that was a peak and will probably never be able to reach that point again. If they stuck to their OG sound, it might have worked for a year or two, but no way for longevity. You don't build a future by replaying your past. The route the band decided to take was evolve their sound with the hard rock that Danny can now bring to the table, which feels more like a compromise for keeping him rather than a win for getting him back. And depending on who you ask, that's either a good or bad thing. But this direction they took kind of resulted into them becoming a legacy band. For most people, they've become one of those bands that you see live just for their hits. But this was kind of inevitable. If we look at Attack Attack, who were the first to do Crabcore and were at the top with Asking Alexandria at the time, they're doing a fraction of Asking Alexandria's numbers, and these guys do play an evolution to the trend they started. And I liked their recent record, Don't Take This As a Jab. The reality is, very few bands from that time maintain cultural dominance forever. The industry, scenes, and fans change and age. What this story really shows us is that identity comes with trade-offs. If you stay the same forever, you preserve your peak but risk becoming a carcass of it. If you evolve, you risk alienating the audience that built you. There's no perfect path, you just pick the one you can live with. And in Danny's case, he picked himself, and whether that costed him fans or not, it was honest. The route that really works today and the industry is paying attention to is the one that Wiglet artists take, such as BB No Money and Oliver Tree. What's Wiglet music? Click right here to find that out.